name is Andrell Mathalier, and I'm a program specialist here with the Patients Program, and I'm honored to be the moderator for this amazing panel today. I also serve as the project manager for CEAL CUE COVID-19, the community think tank on research. CEAL CUE COVID stands for the Community Engagement Alliance Against COVID-19. This NIH-funded project is a 5-university collaboration, and each university is working on something unique for this initiative. The universities a part of this initiative are Johns Hopkins, Howard University, George Washington University, University of Maryland, Baltimore, and Morgan State University. Here at UMB, the Patients Program, we created the Community Think Tank on Research. And we are here today to learn more about this project. So you may be wondering, what is the Community Think Tank on Research? It is a collaborative project where 5 of our community advisors lead the way and have defined the mode of this project. For this project, we host sessions where we invite researchers who have projects with a focus on COVID-19 who apply to present their ideas to our 5 community advisors and receive raw and uncut feedback. 2 of our advisors you will hear from shortly. During a think tank session, researchers are challenged and held accountable to make sure that the community is priority. If I had to describe this project in a couple of sentences, I would use this quote from Pastor Frank Lance, who is also one of our community advisors on this project, and say this: the think tank is meaningful because it gives non-research community persons the opportunity to provide impactful counsel to PIs preparing to do community-engaged research. Imagine community members having the opportunity and authority to shape research for the benefit of participants involved. That is paradigm shifting. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right in. Dewan, can you start by introducing yourself and giving us your 30-second elevator pitch?
No problem. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dewan Patterson. I'm a proud partner advisor to the Patients Program, as well as established community consultant with the Bridge Advisory Group, where I help our institutional and private companies connect, understand their stakeholders, sharing new perspectives, insights, and solutions to bring about the level of deep impact.
Thank you. Ayana?
Good morning, everyone. I am so happy to be here. This is such a powerful program here at the University of Maryland. And Bishop, you were right on target. Thank you for that. But my name is Jennifer Ayana Harrison. I am a health and wellness coach. I focus on working and coaching people through emotional, stressful trauma situations because I believe that 85% of all illnesses have an emotional component. So I'm happy to be here to share.
Joey?
Hey everyone, my name is Joey Mattingly. I'm a pharmacist and faculty member here at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, and I've been a member of the Patients Program since 2016. So thank you all for being here today. This program keeps getting better and better, so thank you all.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with this first question so everyone could understand what the think tank really is. Can each of you describe what the Community Think Tank on Research is to you? We'll start with you, Joey.
Start with me? Well, so I just got to be blunt. Anybody ever watch the old Dave Chappelle show from 20 years ago? So he had a skit out talking about keeping it real. The Community Think Tank is about keeping it real. So I didn't grow up in Baltimore. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. So we have a shared love for Lamar Jackson, for those of y'all who root for that man. So I root for him back when he was in college. But when I came to Baltimore 8 years ago, I didn't know the city. I didn't know the impact of East versus West. I didn't know some of the history of redlining. I didn't know some of those things, right? I come in with my ideas, wanting to study, do different things, study health economics, study the prices of pharmaceuticals and what makes patients pick one drug over the other and things like that. And when you bring an idea to the community think tank, they stop you and say, wait a second. So what's this going to do for our community? And at first, I'm like, I don't know how to answer it. I'm like, well, I try to give some theoretical, and they're like, no, stop. put it in, what is this going to do for the community? And so it really forced me to take a step back and say, I got to write this different. And even members of the community think tank had then graciously worked with me to fix the way I write my grants, like their words. And then they become partners and co-writers of the grants and collaborators on the grants. So it's humbling. So the way I say it is for me, it's about keeping it real.
Ayana?
The patients program in the community think tank is really about engaging people and meeting people where they are, because you can't do research without people. And there's a unity consciousness in that, because if we're conscious of who we are as human beings and we recognize that people have a right, anything involving their health and their well-being, they have a right to be properly informed so that they can make the right decision. So the patients program and the think tank, for me, it gives an opportunity to engage everyone from a conscious level that we're in this together. And without that unity and without that accountability in terms of building trust so that we can move forward and be accountable and be authentic with that, because I think sometimes in research, there are conscious and unconscious biases that sometimes the researchers are not aware of. So we all are part of this big awareness that if we can come together in unity consciousness, if we're conscious of each and every person's role and the accountability, but more importantly, that we share the same compassion to help people to feel better, to move through their life so that they can make better informed decisions. So I'm happy to be a part of that.
Dewan?
It's kind of difficult to come behind some great remarks. I would say the project means to me, I'm going to turn towards the mural in the back. We made mention about the mural earlier. So when I think of the CEAL project and L aspect of it, you'll hear me talk a lot about perspectives, because I believe perspective is just like having a heart. Everyone has one. And similar to this mural, there's pieces in the mural. Everyone have a perspective and a piece to add to the mural. And if you think about the mural represents the outcome of our research. And if we come together and allow everyone to insert their piece, which is their perspective, we are able to see and benefit from the bigger picture. Similar to this mural, not one piece is more valuable than the other, but it's about when they come together, is that the collective makes the bigger picture. So for me, the project we're working on is just the frame of the mural. It's a framework on which we work within. And similar to a framework, it can be relocated to help support another mural. It's not saying that every mural may look the same, but you're providing a level of a framework so we can all enjoy that bigger picture, which is improve health outcomes for all. So that's what it means to me.
So earlier I mentioned that the think tank was created by our 5 leaders. They developed the entire project. They ran it. So if you guys could explain to me why we created the rules of engagement. So we came up with a list of rules of engagement for researchers to follow when they enter the think tank, because it's really the advisor's think tank. They run the think tank. So Ayana, you want to elaborate why we created rules of engagement?
Well, I think with anything where you're working towards some common goals, that you have to have some rules. You have to have something set in place to keep people, first of all, on target and focused on what not only the intention, but what the ultimate goal is that you're trying to attain. So in this, you have an equal exchange of information, and then you can also look at it from the perspective in terms of evaluating how those rules are being implemented and the outcome from those rules. So I think it's always necessary to have in place some ground rules, some measurement to determine your success. And also to see where we need to make some improvements, because it goes both ways.
Dewan?
I would say what comes to mind for me is a level of like parameters, guardrails. On the road, there's a path on which we take. However, sometimes we may have the tendency to go off road, but rules help you to guide you in the right direction. And similar to like rules, they are in place that sometimes it needs to be improved upon. So it may be a better path that we learn later on, but those rules are established as guardrails that help us start and help someone improve upon the direction.
Okay. So I want to switch gears a little bit. Joey was actually our first researcher to come into the think tank and sit in front of our 5 advisors. So can you tell us why, as a researcher, this experience is valuable?
Oh, man. Yeah, I get to be the guinea pig a little bit and go in, but I knew what I was getting into. Fortunately, because I'd worked with several of our advisors on other things, I felt a little bit more comfortable, but that comfort went away quickly when I realized, like, okay, this ain't, we're not just role playing, like, and back to like the rules too. Like, researchers can kind of be like politicians a little bit. We filibuster if we don't know the answer. I mean, when I'm teaching in my class, sometimes I'll go right up to the last minute because I don't want to take a lot of questions. And we try to take the easy way out a little bit. Just a lot of times it's because maybe we don't know and we don't have a good response. And sometimes we're maybe too proud or too stubborn to say, I don't know. Right? And so a little bit of that is also having some vulnerability as a researcher, and so for me, while I had done all my reading, I had put my proposal together, and this was early during the pandemic when we were talking about COVID-19 testing and recommendations and guidelines for COVID-19 testing. And so not only is the topic is a challenge, right? And we're all learning, but when I start presenting to the community, to our think tank, it helped me think about it a different way. And it was such an invaluable experience because no matter what I do, I don't share the same lived experiences as different people who've come up in different paths. And so that's and it doesn't matter what you read out of you can read all the studies. But you have to hear from different individuals, like their perspectives. And then for me, I want our work to be impactful. Like, I want it to help improve the lives of people, whether it's in Baltimore, but across the country. Like, you want to try to improve the human condition. So, like, we're all kind of there together for the same reason. And say, once you kind of put down those things, right? So don't worry about your pride. Don't worry about looking silly if you say something and don't be afraid to say, I don't know. You kind of go into it with that mindset. It's a pretty cool experience. And then, yeah, the think tank will be tough on you, but it's like with love, if that makes sense. Have you ever heard of tough love? But I grew up with tough love from my parents. So it kind of felt like that a little bit.
So one thing we keep hearing is togetherness, and this project is important for the community. So can you guys describe, just so everyone can understand how the think tank is important for the community? Dewan?
Okay, I'll start. For me, from my perspective, I believe that the think tank is beneficial to community is because it helps them provide them with a tool. And one of my core values is always centered around empowerment, allowing people the tools to be best informed to make the decisions for them. And the think tank provides a tool, which is one of them, is something that can be duplicated, whether they're in this particular think tank, they're in their own community, they're being a part of another participatory research project. They have the tools to make the best informed decisions for themselves and the level of self-sufficiency. So I'm really big on that.
Well, I can follow that with an addendum maybe, but I believe people need to know that they're important and that they matter. Whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, whether it's in politics, right now people are stressed mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. And I believe that it's very important for people to know that they have a voice. They have a right to speak up and to stand in that truth unapologetically. And if it means that we need to talk about systemic racism, embedded racism, then we need to have the courage to stand up and speak that truth.
And all I'm adding to that is by that engagement, by stepping up, if you're, and again, not everyone has the time to spend time being an advisor to research or whatnot. So I know, like, you know, it can be tough, but if you get the opportunity to, you know, be an advisor, yeah, don't listen to like what the lead researcher, I don't care how many degrees they have or what they think they know, like you got to advocate and speak up, and don't take the I don't, you know, for like the wavering for an answer, like try to get an answer, because disengaging, so like not being involved doesn't stop the research. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, and that was one of the things when we first got into just doing research with COVID-19 testing, with vaccinations and all of those things. Like, you know, early on in the pandemic, we needed to get the vaccine out, and so the research had to be done, and it was going to be done whether it was, you know, whether the trials were representative of the community or not. And so that's why, like, I think it was, you know, Pastor Lance was one of the big reasons why we got into doing more work in this, because he said, you know what, I want my community represented. And so it was really him that drove us even working on some of those grants, was saying, like, we got to be at the table. So like I said, I think part of it's like knowing that it'll go, the world will keep moving without you if you don't step up. So by you stepping up and putting your 2 cents in, you can have an impact.
Thank you. That's perfect segue into how do we think the think tank can shift the research process?
I think that we can shift the research project just by coming to the table with some authenticity, some unity, and understanding what the real problem is, because you cannot collaborate or set anything up unless you are coming with the same purpose, the same intentions, the same consciousness that is about making people feel better about their participation, and also about creating outcomes that work in the best interests of an individual and the community at large, and to begin to look at it from a holistic approach, because there's so many pieces and so many variables that need to be looked at. And so I think it's important that each person that is involved, researchers coming together with the team, we can create a greater opportunity, not only to serve the community, but to serve ourselves too. Because, you know, biases come in different shapes and different forms, so it gives everybody an opportunity to see where you're standing in it.
Dewan?
And taking your words, adding on to what you just previously said, I believe is a level of pivot to make the research more accountable, providing a level of perspective, accountability, and sometimes when there's a saying that me and Dr. Mullen say about, can I twist your arm a little bit? So like expanding people. So sometimes they may look like transparency, like, hey, what you brought forth at first, it's not enough. Now I need to expand you a little bit more so you can be accountable from some of those biases that you may have had unconsciously, you know. Introduce new perspectives, new approaches, and sometimes potential new outcomes that wasn't previously thought about. So I see that as a few ways in which it could make it better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't help but think about Baltimore has just such a rich history, good and bad. But we've got a history of education with several amazing universities in this city. We are home to so many brilliant minds, but the community hasn't always benefited from the value that the universities gain. Sometimes it's about, like, so as a researcher, a lot of times my incentives are to write a journal article that goes to some, New England Journal of Medicine, and I put that on my resume, and I look like some smart person, and I get promoted. That doesn't always make a big difference in the daily lives of our community, and it's not always valued for us to even do events like this, unfortunately, because it doesn't show up like the same way on a CV, and so it's really a big deal for me seeing Dr. Gerald up here earlier to kind of demonstrate. Yeah, I mean, he can give Dr. Gerald, absolutely, because he's trying to say that, look, our university recognizes that maybe this is something we got to think about when we think about incentives for faculty. How do we make sure that it's not just about putting that journal article out there, but how are you going to make sure that whether it's going to a local community center, going to the public library and talking with seniors, there's so many different ways you can talk to different members of the community. You don't have to just focus on those academic conferences and journals and things like that.
Can you guys describe the dynamic of our group? We have a lot of fun on our calls, even though the sessions can be, valuable and raw feedback, but we have a lot of fun as a team. Ione, want to describe the dynamic of our group?
Well, I think there's a lot of balance in the group. I think we have people from different walks of life, and, that always makes for a different perspective. And I think that, again, creates some balance and some harmony. And, I mean, we can go back and forth with our beliefs and what we believe. But at the same time, when you have a group with that kind of diversity, I think it makes for greater input and an expanded awareness, because sometimes those things that we think we know, we don't know. So if you just take the time to listen, and sometimes that means listening to what people don't say as well, I think that makes for a better collection of people to work cohesively together.
So we have...
I would say our group is the epitome of what a community is. And I know sometimes we overutilize the word community without actually defining what community is, because community doesn't necessarily mean that we have identical experiences. We have the identical complexion or beliefs, but there's a level of values and interests that we share across age, gender, ethnicity, but just the level of passion that we have for the project. It speaks to the different and diversity of our community, to the point where we see ourselves as a family. Sometimes speaking and finishing each other's words, like, oh, I know what you're trying to say. I know what you have your thoughts there. So that speaks to a level of the diversity in our board.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it is definitely, I mean, it's a bunch of humans trying to relate, and so we also recognize, like, especially during the pandemic, this was hard for all of us, personally, professionally, everything, and going forward, it could still be, but just remembering that we're human. Sometimes we're not on our A game all the time, or, like having a little bit more grace with each other and recognizing, like, maybe they had something going on with the family back home, or just had something they were dealing with. So just kind of, not just always focus on the business, but also remembering that we're just people.
And it keeps you focused. When you build those kind of supportive relationships, you also build a strong level of trust, which is a critical piece as well.
Okay, so I have 2 questions from the audience. We're running up on 4 minutes, so we'll try to answer them as quickly as we can. The first question is, why don't we share our programs with patients that see doctors at the hospital?
Well, I can start a little bit on that. So that's a great question. So also remember, too, not everyone's in the same headspace when they're walking into the clinic, okay? And so my early work is in hepatitis C and HIV and those, let's just say it's not always the most exciting thing to be going into an infectious disease clinic. You know, like there's stigma, there's like, I don't want to be contacted or talked, you know, like maybe I don't want you talking to me, you know what I'm saying? So part of it is like having like, making sure there's a way to engage people, to let them know that we exist without being too intrusive as well. So part of it's finding that right balance. I love bringing that up. The more that we work with different physicians, because also too, if we don't have the relationship that maybe the physicians and nurses have with their patients, you know, why do you don't want to see me? But yeah, so part of that's probably the reason is also making sure like what's the right balance. But I love that idea in terms of like maybe we could think more about making sure everyone going into the clinic or the hospital knows that we exist, and maybe there's ways that they can get involved. I love that.
In addition to funding, how else can corporate sponsors support, impact local community patient research programs?
I could start. Beyond funding, one thing that I would say that's valuable is, I know this is a phrase that we always hear a lot, is meeting people where they are. But meeting people where they are beyond the funds can also mean going inside of the community, participating in the activities and events that they value. And understand, I'm very intentional with my words, because what people value will differ. And you have to listen to understand what it is that they value, and that's how you show up and contribute beyond finances. So one tangible way could be establishing a volunteer bank within your corporation, and partner up with the local community leaders, non-traditional and traditional leaders, to identify ways in which you can leverage those bankable hours, whether it's lending volunteer hours, talents, skills, resources, is one tangible way to actually give back, and I would like to say reinvest in the community in which you extract sometimes. Well,
I'd like to see the corporate world look at some real innovative, creative ways of communicating through billboards. You know, we have liquor billboards and billboards that say this. What about a positive affirmation that you're important, that we care about you? I think that would be one thing that could be implemented.
Last thing I would add, and I think DeJuan's done this a few times, I know Miss BJ has several times, companies bring members of the community to your internal like team meetings, sessions, talk to your people. Like when Miss BJ gave a big talk to a company in Boston, gosh, it was pre-pandemic, it's been several years, like we heard about that forever. They were like, it changed everything, because like, you know, I don't know why people don't get out of their bubbles, right? Miss BJ it wasn't like, I know, it was, yeah, so at the end of the day, it's not always just funding, like it's, you know, listen, you know, invite people to come share their stories.
Okay, so I have one last question, if you guys could give me a quick response. When you build a level of trust in the community, how do you plan to keep this trust as the economy is changing?
By continuing to be authentic and to begin to share all information, not part of the story, but share all information, because I think sometimes in academic medicine, they give you one side, but there's always another side. And I think it's also important, pardon me, for people to begin to engage themselves and to become proactive. Do your homework. We want the children to do the homework. Do your own research. You can Google anything. And also, there are some legitimate, well-founded information from other scientists, other research projects that need to be looked at. So if we look at things from a holistic approach, just not one piece of the pie, because there's so many pieces of the pie, but we must all of us take responsibility for becoming more proactive in our overall health and well-being.
real quickly, I would say be consistent in your communication. Similar to a bank account, as long as you're making deposits, when it's time to make a withdrawal, you won't have insufficient funds. So throughout the times, make sure you're communicating, whether it's email, text message, handwritten letters to a physical address may go a long way, knocking at the door of someone, video, virtual chat. So find different ways to stay in connection with people.
Yeah, and especially if there are researchers out there in the room in the audience today, you can't just go to the community when you need to kick off a study. You can't just say, hey, I need you, I'm recruiting, I need this, I need this, I need this. Ask your community members, like, hey, how you doing? Like, what do you need? Like, what are the things that you're working on? We've had several times, I feel like our partners have asked us to do things that are way outside our scope, and so we may not be able to do it, but we can at least maybe connect them with someone else or something like that. And just, again, I guess it sounds like, I don't think I'm saying anything too crazy, but it seems to turn into that. Like, researchers often, they don't reach out and connect unless it's like, I need this for this study or that or whatever. So I would just strongly, like, having a regular, like, check-in and just see how people are doing.
It's so great to hear words such as diversity, voices heard, improvement, compassion, discuss difficult topics, keep it going, and love. So thank you, Duan, Ayana, Joey, for being my panelists today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys have more insight on what the community think tank on research is.